Aside from taking a course in bushcraft, which I do recommend for all of us, have you considered how you might prepare yourself now for the event of an emergency later that could happen to any of us, where you would need to make fire immediately in any environment, any situation, without any preparation in the moment? What can you do today to prepare for that moment? Well, in the next few minutes, I want to talk you through some of the different Tinder Quicks that are available to you, why they're good and bad, and just how to go about making my favorite kind, which looks incidentally a lot like sausage, but is not. Stay with us as we make wonderful little Tinder Quicks. Depending on your environment and situation, you may find it important and valuable for you to learn how to make some Tinder Quick. And what I mean by that is something that's going to be able to catch a little spark and light a fire no matter where you are in any environment. I'm going to talk through some of the most popular real quick with you before we make my favorite one. And so let's just talk about what some of the general ones are out there that you would find and why you would want them. If I'm in the wild where I know that there are plenty of pine trees around, I can just assume that I'm going to be able to find some good mushrooms that have hardened on the sides of trees, or some fat wood that's able to give me an excellent catch for a spark and light up even on a wet day. So if I've got access to fat wood, that's probably going to be my favorite choice out there. If I'm in an urban environment though, I've got to plan ahead because there isn't just something readily available necessarily around me to start a fire. You need, remember, two items. You need an ignition source and you need some sort of tinder that's going to catch that ignition spark and be able to hold the flame so that you can add stuff to it and get a good fire going. Some of the most popular that you'll see from people that live in town might be a little fire disc like this or something similar. You've seen those fire logs that you can buy at the grocery store where it's just virtually a bunch of chemicals and sawdust and everything compressed together, and it catches a fire pretty quick. You can break this up into smaller pieces so everybody in the family has a little bit of it to carry with them. That can work. Also, you'll see some people carry this jute thread with them, and this is wonderful for catching a spark. The only thing is it does have a little bit of a difficulty if it gets wet. Another one that's similar to this is going to be char cloth, and if you're not familiar with char cloth, that's just like little pieces of denim where you've taken some old jeans and cut them up into squares. You can put them in a little Altoids tin and stick that Altoids tin over the fire and let it kind of cook until those pieces of cloth inside have turned to half charcoal, half cloth, is kind of what that char cloth is, and it catches a spark really good, about like this jute does. But again, if it gets wet, if you're out in the rain, you're going to regret it because that's not going to do well for you. Another thing people can buy is these little tablets or cubes that are fire starter cubes. You can get those at the store if you want to buy them. That's great if you've got money. I would encourage you. Sure, that's an investment worthy of being made. Another thing that's super common, this is probably the most common and most popular among preppers, would be Vaseline dipped cotton balls. And these are fantastic for catching a spark, holding a flame, and burning long enough that you have time to get some little twigs on there and get that flame going well. The only thing I would say about these is that they are just a little bit messy, and if by chance the bag that you carry them in is punctured, you're going to have some Vaseline squishing all over there in your bug out bag, and that may or may not be something that you like. Some folks like to carry with them a little votive candle. I would say this is the last one I would recommend. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it at all. It's great to have a candle with you, but this is not going to catch a spark, and if you thought, oh, I'll just use my lighter to light the wick of that candle, you've got to have perfect weather, no wind, and it has to catch it very well. I would just recommend probably that this isn't a good one to consider as a Tinder Quick. Another thing, if you're out in the forest, you might, like I do, collect anytime you come across some good pine sap resin. You just pick that off the tree. This is my little collection of it. And anytime I come across a good little chunk, I'll just throw it in there, and it's excellent for grabbing a spark and getting a fire going. But I'm going to share today, I just call these my little, I call them just Tinder Quicks, but it also could be called a cookie Tinder Quick or something. These are made out of wonderful little cotton rounds that you get at the dollar store or at Walmart, and I kind of have taken them up a notch by dipping them in some paraffin wax just from an old candle. You can have any kind of old candles in your house, but once they've used up all their wicks and I need to do something with that wax that's left, they become my wonderful little ingredient for the Tinder Quicks I make. And then the other thing I put on there is, of course, dryer lint. You've got to use that for something good. And I love being able to repurpose it for something very handy, like making these. So, once again, get whatever it is that works for you and your environment and what you've got going. And I'll say this, make sure that you've also got a very reliable way to start fire. For most of us, this is going to do just great. The only thing is it doesn't always work in the wind and rain. It's kind of a little bit schizophrenic when the weather gets bad. But if you've got a nice ferro rod, or you could get a magnesium, little magnesium square that you can make some shavings of magnesium and then a striker rod on the side to get the fire started, that's great. You can get some strike anywhere matches, and if you dip them in wax, I'm sure you know you can make those fireproof as well, or I mean, not fireproof, waterproof as well. But some folks like the little version they get right on their nice bracelet where you're wearing a little ferro rod and a little striker right there on it. There's all kinds of ways. You get the one that works for you that you're absolutely sure you know how to use. And remember, we're saying that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So don't just have one way to make fire. You want multiple ways to make that spark. But once you've made these wonderful little cookies out of your wonderful, I don't even know what they're called, Swiss spurs, I think is what the name is on my package here, but I'm sure they come by many names. Once they've been dipped in paraffin wax and have a little bit of my extra toppings I put on them that are completely, these are not required, but I usually put a few little fat wood shavings on top and some dryer lint. These are going to make an excellent fire starter because they're waterproof. They do not melt in the heat. If I needed to start a fire, this is going to be about 4 different Tinder Quicks for me, all in one pad. I literally just tear it apart. I can tear it apart a second time because I really could do more than 4, but tear it apart and it has got everything I need in there to catch a fantastic spark and be a wonderful all-weather, all-purpose Tinder Quick for me. So let's go inside and make some of these ourselves together. The beauty of this recipe is obviously we're only going to do this about once in your whole lifetime, but you can use a myriad of different waxes, anything that has gotten used up. You'll notice I have several Christmas candles here. Some of them just burned down to their last. This one just didn't burn well at all because it was poorly made in the first place, and no matter what I do, it just isn't going to burn well with the wick that's in it, so I'm going to reuse that wax on it. Here's another Christmas candle. These are other ones that have been out in the camper and just burned down, but have plenty of wax that's usable for us. You can even use the little wax cubes that are scented. I don't want anything that we're making today to be highly scented, so you're going to use it after you have already used these and they've lost their scent. I've put them in a little warmer. After they've been in there for a while, they just lose their smell, but I want to reuse that wax and make it usable again. So I usually, once it's used up, I'll pour it back into its empty container and save it up for when I'm going to make this recipe of little Tinder Quicks. You can also use beeswax. However, that's a pretty expensive little investment and it's such a wonderful thing to have for other projects. I usually don't use beeswax. I just wanted to show you you can use it. And then this is what you're going to typically see at the dollar store. This is a very cheap little candle with no smell to it at all. Has lots of air in it already. And they burn so quickly out. You can see this one's even lost its wick, so that's just straight wax I can use for this project and it'll be wonderful. Whatever you've got though, soy candles, beeswax candles, any of that can be used for this recipe so long as it's lost most of its scent and just is good wax that can be reused. I've got my grandmother's Revereware pan with just about a ½ inch of water in the bottom of it. And then I have my little double boiler. This is actually for melting chocolate. It's stainless steel and has a great surface on it, so I'm going to melt my wax right in there. And literally, I'm just going to take my bits of wax, throw them in there, and put it on about a medium heat so that it warms up slowly. And we'll let this get melting while we work on getting our little pads ready. So I've got that thrown in there. I have a project wood spoon. This is not one that I cook with. The wax is taking care of itself melting, and it goes very quickly, but let me tell you about these first. These are the round cotton little pads that you can get for cosmetics and all kinds of different projects. They come in about a 100 count package for $2 at Walmart or the dollar store, or a 50 count package for about $1. So either way, you're going to spend about 2 cents per round. And these that I've got here are the very cheapest, and they're perfectly round, but you can also get them in little squares that kind of have 4 little plaques in them. And I like those because they kind of remind me, oh yes, you can tear this into 4. Now, the reason that I do this with these, I want to show you. I take and mark a little cross on these, partly because if I'm in an emergency situation, if you're like me, you think a lot with a lot more difficulty and challenge than you do in an easy situation. I didn't realize that until we had lightning strike out in our field and was coming toward the house, and my father reacted with great calm, and there I just went ballistic, and I realized, hey, I'm not ready for a catastrophe as much as I think I am. So I recognize that when you're in a dangerous situation, when you're just running on adrenaline, you might forget, hey, you can take this and cut it up into 4 pieces. In fact, these are kind of the little break marks for us later, where we can go and break it into 4 different Tinder Quicks instead of using it just one time and using it up. If I'm operating under complete adrenaline in a scary situation, I might likely just throw a match on this and think, oh, I'm ready to go. But now that we've got these marked, I am going to take that off. I'm going to go ahead and get them ready, because the wax is almost ready for us to dip them in like little cookies, and we're going to put them right back out here on this is parchment paper. I think it works better than wax paper, but either one will work. And I've got 2 cookie sheets, so we'll make 2 cookie sheets worth of these once we've dipped them in, and we'll dip them right back out and put them like little cookies on here and go from there. All right, this went very, very quickly. There are a few stray wicks that have settled to the bottom, and that's fine, but we've got plenty of wax, more than we even need for this project, because it takes very little. I'm going to go ahead and take my spoon out, and I've got this wonderful set of tongs that's standing by waiting to be used. This is going to go fast, so you're going to want to just pay quick attention. I've got these already ready to go, and I'm going to put in, oh, maybe about, what, is that 8 about at a time? Maybe even fewer. But all they have to do is get saturated in there, and once they've saturated, I'm just going to pull them out and place them right here to dry. It goes really quick, and I'll just set them all out, and then we'll put yummy stuff on top. All right, we've got these ready to go, and now this is the fun part. We're going to take that fat wood that we've shaved up in here and just put a little bit of decorations on the top of these. So I'm going to literally just sprinkle it over the top. I just want a little bit on each of them, and I might push it down just to make sure that the wax grabs a hold of it, because as they dry, I want that wax to really take a hold of the little bit of fat wood that we're putting on top of them. And you don't hardly need any, just a few shavings on each. Give them an extra little bit of gumption here. That one kind of didn't get much. All right, they're looking more like cookies every minute. All right, and then last but not least, which is totally optional again, depending on what you've got, I have saved dryer lint, and I like putting just a little tiny bit somewhere right in the middle of each of these, and I just kind of squish it on there. Nothing extra pretty, but the wax grabs it and kind of holds on to it. Those are some ugly looking cookies. I don't think anybody is going to mistake them and eat them, but they sure are going to make a great fire for us. Look a little bit like jerky. Now we just wait for them to cool, set up, and they're good to go. All right, they came out quickly. They were very easy to make. Now let's take them outside and see if we can get them to light up. With a striker rod and the back of a knife, I'll tell you the hardest part of this whole thing is going to be getting that spark to aim in the exact spot. It might take you quite a few tries, just like it takes me. I'll tell you, I'm not an expert at this, but with a little bit of patience with yourself, go ahead and get some good practice at this so that you're good at it ahead of time. And we have fire! There's nothing more fun than finding that you are able to make a fire. All right, now it's your turn. I hope you'll take the time to make some of these today, and take the time to share this video with a friend who you love who might benefit from it also. And take the time to be patient with yourself when you go outside and practice, because this isn't something that comes instantly without doing it a few times and getting the hang of it. All right, until I see you again, God bless you, and go out and be a blessing to someone else today. Hey, before you leave, I want to read to you just a smidgen of Psalm 33. This is verses 6 through 9. It says this: "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. He gathers the water of the sea as a heap, and he puts the deeps in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stands firm." Now go spread the word.